The Boss stars Melissa McCarthy, and it's directed by her husband, Ben Falcone, and it co-stars Kristen Bell and Peter Dinklage in there, and is the first big Melissa McCarthy movie of 2016, the second being Ghostbusters, which will come a little bit later in the summer. And the premise of this movie is Melissa McCarthy plays a big-wig, successful woman, and she's a little bit eccentric and a little bit full of herself, and she's all successful and all that, and then she dabbles in a little bit of illegal stuff, and then she has to go to jail, and then she comes out of jail, and then all her assets are frozen, so now she has to go back to her assistant that she was a jerk to, Kristen Bell, and then she has to learn how to be a good person, and then what ends up happening is she gets into a whole business thing with her daughter, being in Girl Scout cookies, and she's going to build a whole new empire, and it's a pretty straightforward, regular kind of comedy that we get from Melissa McCarthy. Now the thing is, I like Melissa McCarthy. I think she's a very, very funny actress. I think she has a great comedic timing. I think that she's really good at improv, and I really like her sensibilities as an actress. She can be emotional and funny, and she's a whole package. But the thing is, she plays so much of the same character in so many of her movies that a lot of people are getting kind of sick of her. I'm not exactly getting sick of her, because I like her when she's in good movies, but when she's in not as well written movies or not as well directed movies, she's just not as good, you know? So when she's in a better directed movie, like in most of her Paul Feig movies like Spy or Bridesmaids, she does a fantastic job. But in her last movie, Tammy, which is directed the same director as this, which is her husband, she's just not as good in those because those movies just aren't as strong. And that's kind of the case with this movie, is that she's such a funny character, and she's just such a funny person in general, that she just makes you laugh at the things that she does. But the movie that she's in right here is just not all that special. It's kind of very generic. It's kind of right by the books. And the thing with this movie is a lot of the jokes land because Melissa McCarthy is so funny. Nobody else in the movie is all that funny, really. Just her as a comedic actress really makes you laugh, but there's so many jokes thrown at you, and I feel like the movie just lands where it's half of the jokes hit really hard, and they're really funny, and they really make you laugh out loud, but then the other half of the jokes, or the majority of the jokes, just don't land, and they're just not funny because it's either not given by Melissa McCarthy, or it's given by her, but it's just not funny. And that's my biggest problem with this movie, is that just so many of the jokes just don't land. And when they do land and they are funny, it's awesome, and you laugh out loud and you're having a great time. But the majority of the time, they just come across as unclever, unfunny, unoriginal, and that's the big bummer with this movie, because I love Melissa McCarthy and I want her to be in great movies, but in so many of her movies, they just don't land well, and they're just unbelievable characters. And that's the thing with this movie, is so much of it is so hyper-realized that it becomes a cartoon. It becomes like not even real characters. She starts out as this real character, and she's over the top or whatever, crazy, but you could get behind her because, you know, you care about Melissa McCarthy, and she has somewhat of a real character and a real heart to her, but then she gets put in these situations where she goes so over the top, and then the people around her are so over the top. But Peter Dinklage in this movie is almost the same character he was in Pixels. Pixels was, I thought, an awful movie. And in that movie, I thought he was somewhat of a bright star in that movie. And that's just because I think Peter Dinklage is like a funny guy. But in this movie, he plays like such a crazy, insane character that you can't even like possibly get behind him, because he's just so over the top. It's like in Game of Thrones, he's such a great actor, and you want to see him in more movies because you love him, and you love him in Game of Thrones. But then when you see him in movies, he goes for like these crazy, insane characters, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, can you just be as good as we know you are in movies and not be so crazy and over the top? I feel like he's just doing these things for the paycheck and just doing them because, like, you know, they're fun to do, and like, whatever, I have my serious work with Game of Thrones, and I'm just going to be in this ridiculous, crazy comedy just for, for fun. And, you know, that's fine as an actor, but watching you, it's like, dude, oh my God, what are you doing? It's so crazy over the top. and that's what I feel this movie is. It's just so crazy and over the top that I feel like if they would have just reined back a little bit and it's focused more on the family element of Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy and her and the family and her building up the Girl Scout cookie things and whatever, because that part of the story I liked, and I thought that like there was a lot of laughs in there, and it could have ended up being a little bit more like Role Models, how Role Models was crazy and over the top in some parts, but there was a heart to the movie and there was a core that really connected you to the characters, and I thought that this movie could have done that, but unfortunately it does not, and it goes way over the top and crazy, and so much of the humor is so vulgar, and it's like I understand her character is like in your face and like all swearing and all that stuff, and that's fine. I understand her as that character, but the movie takes on this image of like, that's what this movie is, it's crazy and it's dirty, but then at the same time it's trying to be like, oh, but we're like cute and like we like the family element. Pick a side, and I felt like the more family oriented side of it was better, and it like worked better because it had a heart to it and it was more relatable. And then when it went crazy and over the top and dirty and everything, it just didn't work, which is unfortunate. And that's what I feel about this movie, is it's just a missed opportunity, because I felt like there's a funny movie in here and there's so many jokes that do land, but there's so many that don't land, and it, the movie is just not very good because of it. The whole performances and everything, Melissa McCarthy was funny, as always. I think she's very, very funny, as I said. All the other actors, like I said, Peter Dinklage is way over the top, so crazy. Kristen Wiig is whatever. She's fine. I mean, I like her as an actress, but in this movie, she's just whatever. She's just playing, an okay character. All the little girls and Girl Scouts, they were all hit and miss. They were, nothing special or anything. The directing, I don't think this director is very good for directing his wife in these movies. I feel like he goes for this insane tone that other directors know how to handle better for Melissa McCarthy, but he just doesn't know how to handle his wife, and unfortunately I feel like the directing was kind of just subpar. Nothing was very special about this movie. There was a lot of laughs that hit though, so that brings the movie up for me. There just wasn't enough to make me say, yeah, you know what, it was actually good. Despite all the bad things, it was still a good movie. No, there was so much jokes that didn't land that it's kind of below average for me. I'm going to have to go 2 out of 5 for The Boss. It's a pretty disappointing movie. I wasn't really all that excited for it. I thought the trailers were okay, so I'm not disappointed or anything, but there was so many laughs in there that I was like, you know what, this could be a good movie, but so many didn't land and went over the top, so I'm going to have to go, 2 out of 5. It's an okay movie at best. But that's it. But I'm still on Melissa McCarthy's team. I'm somewhat excited for Ghostbusters. We'll see how that turns out. That one's directed by Paul Feig though, so I think the better directing might just lend to a better movie in that case. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see when that movie comes out. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this and you want to see more reviews from a guy like me, like Ghostbusters, you can subscribe, and I'll see you next time.